Oh, El Magnifico. Yes, I never
Took a
know.
long time, didn't it?
Never know. Yeah, no. Now, before we begin, I've been thinking all week about what one of you asked me. Think about 7 days. I've had to think about this. Why didn't they keep a republic? Because, they may do it before long. And this was their big chance in the 17th century, before the American experience. But this is their effort at a republic. Even after the events of the 30th of January, 1649, which an absent person knows all about it. She does. I mean, even though she was ostensibly absent, pursuing other activities, I suppose. She knows that day. We all know it so well because the sacred blood was shed of what the Church of England calls the Venerable Charles. Yes, indeed. Check your prayer books, folks. He has, in many of the old versions, the day set aside, king and martyr. Can you believe it? So, most of us do not have the most positive impression of King Charles. He meant well. As the Archbishop, who got his head chopped off too, William Laud said, it's sort of like, how do they say that about people? He wanted to be great, but he just didn't have what it took. And it's like you say E for effort, but even that doesn't make you feel real good. But there you have it. And frankly, cinema has not been necessarily kind to him. And now for the young people. This was 1970. It was a big year. Some of us remember 1970. You were just a teenager then, so you probably would not have been allowed to go to this. There would be your parents would have said too much violence and they didn't want you upset. You were too busy with your studies. And I'm not sure that maybe even those of us who were grown-ups then, maybe we wanted to pass on that. Back then I did my share of popcorn eating and that kind of thing. But maybe I would have preferred something else than this. You say, you heretic, how could you say this about a historical movie? Okay, read the reviews. Yeah, go straight to the reviews. There are a lot of historical errors, and you say, we have to expect that. It's just a movie. Deal with it. But this was some serious business. Dating errors, things that would be pretty offensive for a lot of us. So, now I did have the stars. Alec Guinness, he was a major star back then. Yeah. He played King Charles the First. So the trial of Charles and all that. And Richard Harris as, of course, the one and the only. Some would say he's still burning in hell. That would be, of course, Oliver Cromwell. He's a fascinating character. If you like, from the French Revolution, if you like Robespierre, you'll love Cromwell. He would last a decade as leader. I mean, I would have to be on medication to be able to do what he did. And it was not good. And when he died in 1658, and you will need to know that day, please remember that. It is very significant, to understand that these were not years of bliss and everything's coming up roses. it was not a good situation. So much for bliss in the Republic. Should I say, at the risk of being called a Tory, that we want our king. We want to. I won't go that far, but Cromwell's period did not create a lot of Republican fervor, shall we put it that way? So, with that and understanding, this is the only film I could come up with, and that only moderately received by critics. So, again, I was seeing a lot of movies then when I should have been studying, should have been in the library. But I was sometimes living on the wild side. Yeah. Yeah, no, going to movies when I should have been in the library. Yeah. But, and you can see Timothy Dalton down there. And that's interesting, isn't it, to think? I know, it's amazing to think of it. I'm sorry. I believe he was. We're going to come across Ireton, who was Cromwell's son-in-law.
It says Prince Rupert.
Who is it?
It says he played Prince Rupert.
Oh, we talked about Prince Rupert last time. He was the nephew. And remember later on he would go to Canada. So he was very dashing and he commanded royal troops. Do you remember that? From a week ago? Well, easy come, easy go. Yeah. So Prince Rupert, you need to go over those facts again. But anyway, you'll remember that. But he was Rupert. Well, anyway, 1970. Okay, that was a very interesting year. So, but you don't have to know all that. That's extra for you. Here he is. And believe me, he was charismatic, like Robespierre and many of these folks. He thought he knew what was what. And if you disagreed, he would say, you're wrong. And God and I know what's best. I mean, all of the individuals of this sort, I feel like, have that sort of shall we call it self-confidence? In capital SC. I mean, it's because you can't reason with someone like that. And you think he was a rural lawyer, came up by being a member of the House of Commons. It sounds so much like Robespierre if you think about it, because he was like a boondocks kind of attorney from Eastern France. And then he got to be a member of the House of the States General, and then rose to power because he's the kind of person who would stand up and talk, and everybody listened, and he gained power. As far as he was concerned, it was the fact that there's a certain power vacuum after the king is more or less so compromised, and he's about to become the late king. So this is back in 1648. So it's before the execution. The king is playing footsie with the Scots because the Scots had been involved with the Parliament, aka House of Commons. And finally, all of this led, after the complications, much of which I'm omitting, would lead to, well, the king's out of it. And you know he'll have that stay in the Tower, as they always do, before. And then a sort of a government is going to be replaced. And that will be, as you see, the rump parliament. And a rump means Well, many of us have cooked once, haven't we? So it's what's left when we get the ungodly out. Now, how do we recognize the ungodly? Well, I mean, you're a Jesuit. You're not going to be there in the first place. But if you are a known associate of them, you hang out with them. Are any elements that are not on the approved list? And they will include a very interesting bunch of folks, and we'll talk about that in a minute. House of Lords, you go home. You're not needed anymore. All of you prayer book lovers, you can leave too. And you say, but we're the church. You were. Now, if you want to follow it, you go underground. You know, someone wrote a PhD on that. I know there's something on everything, right? Come to the third floor of Patch Hall and you can read all about it. It's and probably nobody will bother you because I don't think anyone's touched it since it was finished. But it's a basic, I know, I said, isn't it? I could make that an assignment. And I know this weekend, it's like reading about what did the Anglican Church do during this period. It was not good. Because if somebody, during this so-called godly republic, and they'd say, what do you know about the prayer book? And see somebody nice Episcopalian like you might say, well, I know all about that. And they'd say, oh, really? I think you'll need to come with us. Like some sort of something like you have your rights and all that. Because, it was not good to be an Anglican. So, House of Lords is gone. Because remember, the bishops are members of the House of Lords. They still are. I don't know for how much longer, but they are now. And all of this is to say it's going to be a much smaller government in the sense that they will have this rump parliament, Cromwell, and the Council of State. And who are they? Well, you can figure they are, yes, man. Let's just say they're people who are in line with Cromwell. And if you go around the table and say, would they support capital punishment for the king? Oh, yeah. He's got it coming. He's ungodly. He hurt the people. And Lord knows the Scots don't like him. And it's like, it's a very, very difficult situation for King Charles up to that 30th of January, 1649, which you'll remember. So, why would he expel Presbyterians? Because many of us love Presbyterians. We know them. They're right there right downtown. Because, of course, they want that organized church. Oh, yeah. They may not be using the prayer book, but they're kind of close to it. So they need to be eliminated. Out they go. I know you say, gosh, all of these folks out of there, yeah, because you don't fit into the plans. I don't know about those levelers and diggers, but all of that is to say he's an independent Puritan. Think about all the classifications. It's like dogs or something. You got so many varieties. He's an independent Puritan means that he basically would like a broader sort of English church. And whatever you want to believe, that's fine, within reason. And if you come in and you're some sort of Unitarian or something, and I don't want any Quakers, none of that. So, it's not exactly broad-minded. But, and we don't want any Roman Catholics.
No, no.
So, just in case you got
Okay,
confused
Priscilla.
and you thought popery was out, no. I'll bring them in. But basically, all of these different sorts of Christian groups would have been permitted. And how all that was going to work out, I don't know. It's what we say, some sort of kumbaya, and then everybody, we are the world. I always have problems with that. It sounds very good on paper, but I'm not sure how it would really work. But that's the independent Puritan. And you know what it means to be a Puritan. Of course, it means
Zero fun. Negative zero.
I'm thinking about purifying the services.
Oh.
Yeah. And you will go a long read. And you say, well, I want Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Okay, you can have that. And you can have the epistles. But you can also have some Old Testament. And we don't have to worry about time. We don't have to worry about, oh gosh, is this just going to be an hour? Oh, no. Just as long as we need. But I want to go out and play sports, or no, you don't. But when you go home, you're going to do more Bible reading. Yeah. So that's all part of this particular idea, independent Puritan. And so the choices mean that as far as the religions of the past, according to him, they're all going to be out. So it's like upside down, isn't it? And the groups, I mean, I guess the Catholics just continued to be underground. But now they are joined by their Anglican brethren because they're also, because I mean, they might have been real sad about King Charles, but he's gone now in January 30th, 1649, which you know too well. Here we have Colonel Pride and his troops. This is called Pride's Purge. Purges. Just think about that with Russia, Soviet Union purges and all that. Heard about that years ago. This Pride's Purge basically represents getting rid of the people that many of us love. You think, gosh, I was just talking to some Calvinists last week. What a great group. Oh, that John Knox. What a rock. I know. And you probably Calvin. And we all love Geneva. They want to go to Geneva. So basically, just be aware of the fact that in this new regime, Presbyterians are out. Why? State church. Too much dogma. And we want Bible reading, we want sermons, and to know, so they'll know they're going to HEW. They better straighten out and try right. And those Presbyterians might be somewhat lax, like those Anglicans or idol worshipers or whatnot. Yeah. So it's like, and you say, what kind of Presbyterians? That's what makes this such a, it used the term, it sounds so dated, far out explanation of religion. Because these people are definitely, as we would think, out of the woodwork. I mean, because they were not necessarily typical Englishmen, but it worked. Because, like Frank was telling about levelers and diggers, because I don't think they were exactly big deals until this era. I mean, I don't think they would have been allowed. But some of their ideas were pretty diggers, for example, people who would bring out things like they would talk about in California in the 60s. I mean, something like the Mamas and the Papas. I mean, it's like, I mean, you think all of this idea, all is good, and Aquarius. And,
Compared to communists and anarchists.
exactly. I mean, but all the world is love and communes or going to California and but I think the diggers had different purpose. I mean, they were going to study, work on the land
Work on the
together,
land.
and all of that. Anyway, we look at the plus of the Cromwellian period, and we think about people that we're going to love even more than we do now, the Dutch. And you're going like, this hurts so much, and I'm sorry about that. I know the English fighting the Dutch, doesn't that just seem wrong? I know. I know. Peace, Nick. I'm not sure that's what the consideration is. The consideration is something that we all hate, because they are both colonial powers. And those Dutch, and I don't want to shock you, they love money. Big time. Nay, not love. It's super love. Yeah, they definitely. And they are one of the great imperial builders. And you just check your maps. If you, and I've got a map for you to show you. The conflicts are clear. And I mean, you think maybe Cromwell went to bed at night and says, I'm so sorry. Those are good followers of the teachings of John Calvin, and I love them so. So I want to have a nice Bible reading in honor of the Dutch. I don't know, but it seems a little hypocritical, doesn't it, for the English to go to war against the Dutch? But there are 3 wars, and they are, of course, all about these empires. Remember, we are in the 17th century. And they are competing. Remember how New Amsterdam became New York? You know, remember your American history in high school. Did you learn that? About empires they used to teach you. Yeah. But the idea is that these wars, I guess, were popular among certain elements of the population. And the English were very successful in them. So that made people happy, bringing the Scots under control, because they got right cocky during the period, you know, when they had so much power over King Charles. Because, remember, it's because of him, or them, that Charles was ultimately brought under the control of Parliament and then executed. Yep. So now those Scots said, well, what's in it for us? And Cromwell said, what's in it for you is to do what the English said. Yeah. So more or less, this is a way to see that the English military forces are going to subdue Scotland. And you say, gosh, that's so hurtful. I thought they had gotten close. Well, you know, as long as they have the common enemy of King Charles, I think it worked. But and then there's the question of our friends in Ireland. They had been in somewhat of a rambunctious mood, shall we say. And Cromwell has a problem with them, not to mention their religion. The tales of Cromwell's troops and the Irish during the 17th century are the stuff of horrific legend, meaning the things he was supposed that his troops were doing against the Irish. I mean, not that there was any war criminal, any of that, because I'm sure the English were pleased because the Irish were not popular among the English anyway. So this is one of the most famous issues of this, well, 1650s when this was going on. He will die in 1658. Now, for those who are young, a decade seems like forever, but for those of us who've moved on, a decade doesn't seem like that much, but that's all that this Cromwellian period lasts. So a lot goes on, but the whole Irish business. So I'd say the Irish business will stay in popular memory longer than any of this other business. You know, like the wars with the Dutch. I mean, that's very important in economic history, but colonial history, but all of that may make him popular sometimes. Wars can help rulers. But he had lots of other issues because some of you will remember, how could you forget him? Because your mind is like steel trap. Simon de Montfort. And I bet you want extra credit because of your knowledge. And I'm not going to call on you, but I'm just proud that you have stored this away. Because remember, knowledge is like interest, in the bank. Like you have a special account. It's growing. Simon de Montfort, I mean, that's idea of like, people say, well, we think you ought to do this. And then he says, well, that's your opinion. And you're a loser. So we're not going to do that. I mean, that's not going to make you feel good. But that's sometimes God, and I think this is the way it's got to be. Because remember, he's very sure that he's in this special relationship. And while he will not accept the title of king, oh, shucks, so humble. He'll be called Lord Protector. So he understands this kind of authority he has. And you think, is all of this just building up to his saying, gosh, I'm excited. I've heard from across the water that the little king is growing up. And no, I mean, they don't plan at this point to bring him back again. Because I'm God's agent, and I'm establishing more or less the heavenly kingdom on earth. And so all you worldly types or you wrong believers, you shut up and behave. You're going to hell anyway. So, and so this is called a protectorate. He was the Lord Protector. And they talking about maybe some of the Cromwell's household people might have started want to call him Your Majesty. Oh. His wife, Oliver Cromwell's wife, she had actually gone out shopping in public. I mean, it's like, no, you can't do things like that. But remember, it's a relatively short period, but they really didn't know exactly what they were going to be. But this is a big deal. And he had lots of problems getting everybody to come together. And there were lots of groups already who were, shall we say, not happy with his leadership. And with the Catholics, Anglicans, Quakers, Unitarians, the list is nameless. I mean, yeah, it's like, and Jews, yeah.
Like that.
He would allow certain numbers, but in general, the groups that he favored, of course, were individuals of his ilk, that is independence. But anybody who was, I guess, Christian and was not Catholic or Anglican or something was acceptable. So, now, one thing I always thought was interesting was establishing military districts, because that's when it comes down to it. The army, the military. It's like, why do we need the military? Well, we know our favorite series from the day, Law and Order. Yes, because there are folks who might misbehave, and these generals, and they will be in the various areas. We're gonna have a map momentarily. But I want you to understand these areas, if we come across and we find some of you out gambling, or Sunday afternoon you're watching the NFL instead of doing a Bible reading, you think, oh, well, that's naughty. You know what you should do. I think this could be very serious. So these generals had a fair share of power. Because again, you say, you don't go to church, it's a free country, it's your right. Not really. Yeah, kind of. I mean, if you're some sort of closeted Catholic, I mean, maybe you just have to go and just, I don't know how that. And then you get with a lot of other Catholics, and God, that was awful. But you've done what you had to do. So that was the idea. But if you just hang around like in my little town when I was a boy, I remember my mother coming home from church and I saw a man out mowing his lawn. And I thought that was the funny. I didn't laugh at her, but I thought that was hilarious because you wouldn't want to be seen out because that just wasn't the way it was. It was a different time, should we say. Yes. So all of that is to say that these policies, especially policies of holidays, we love our holidays. Most of them were done away with, including Christmas. And that's interesting because people don't understand that they view these holidays as pagan affairs. And we think about it now more like something out of Charles, the readings that you think about Christmas Carol and all the rest. But back then, I think they associated that. Well, I mean, there are various holidays today. I know in France. I was trying to think of one. It's in the middle of the summer because I made the mistake of going that day to Versailles. And I thought somehow maybe the spirits will protect me because I've never seen so many. Have you ever had that feeling of being crushed?
Yeah, especially
It's-
Versailles.
Yeah, mid-August. Is that Immaculate Conception? Maybe? But it's a big church day. And that means, everybody's out of vacances, as they say. So they were there, and I'm thinking, I wish I didn't have to come. That sort of, but that's what they did. And if you tried to get together and let's have a big old Saints Day festivity, you're going down. So, yeah, because what are you, some closet Catholic? Yeah. So, that's like, how well can they enforce that? It's like you read about this and then don't you wonder how well it worked? But I guess it's just the idea. but of his trying to get all this info. Map time. And you say, and this will be a good question. I'm going to put this on to the stretch. I said, well, the book said 12. But you see just 10 of these areas. And with a brilliant group like this, I bet you know what 11 and 12 are. But I bet you they have special people there, enforcers, who help people. If you guessed Ireland and Scotland, you got it right. Yeah. Because you know those Irish, they're gonna act ugly when if you don't watch them. You know, it's like they're not gonna say, "Oh shucks, we just want to help them." However, and yeah, and you see Scotland, see Wales, and you got all the Cotswold. That's a beautiful area. All of these areas, the Lake District. So there's some beautiful areas there, but the idea is those generals were to lead their forces towards enforcement of regulations. No more Saints' days. And you say, well, what can you do instead of that? And they do this in France in the 1790s. They began, having Mother's Day or something like that. But if you say we got to get together for St. Teresa's Day, yeah, no, that's a no-no. But you understand, the working people enjoy these holidays because this is their time off, and they didn't view it so much in religious terms, but they viewed it in terms of like having a party, getting together. So all of that was supposed to work at, see London, way down south. Brett probably had its own headquarters there. All of that then is using the military to try to enforce authority. And again, I guess we'll never know how much it worked, but by that point, I imagine Cromwell, mid to late 1650s, he was understanding that whatever excitement people had had about the Lord Protectorate was probably fading. In any event, as far as judging the dimensions of Anglo-Dutch competition, you can see it here on the map. And I think it's very interesting again. Oh, I know we love those tulips, but that is not what the Dutch were doing according to this map, because it appears to me that they might well be, and this is Dutch only, but you see, I think they're shipping slaves to Brazil. That area, I don't know if it was Brazil by then, but they're early on. But that particular area, which would become, I think, the largest number of slaves, even larger than the Americans. In any event, all of these areas is to show you. And of course, up there in what became New York as opposed to New Amsterdam, which it was originally. And you don't need to bring up any of this when you're in the Netherlands. Just enjoy the tulips and just move on, because we're not there to create another Anglo-Dutch. They are NATO and they love each other very much. But this is 17th century. It's all in the history books. All of this then, as you can see, is part of this competition. And see, it goes all the way eastward That is to say, the Dutch, but the British as well, or English, I should say. All of this then is to indicate they do not say this whole Cromwellian period, they don't say we don't need any bad relations. Let's just all love each other. This is what God wants us to do. These Dutch are good people. We all want to read the Institutes of the Christian Religion together. You know, now I just don't see that, even though it seems very odd, doesn't it, that they both follow Calvinist tradition. But money over religion, I guess you could say. Now, on we go to the levelers. Look at this. And I'm glad we have printed by then. But they're putting out the propaganda. And look at what it says. And who are these people? Well, the idea is they are either enlisted personnel, as we say, you know, military, and they're friends. And they have a very important role to play. I mean, after all this period, they're always fighting wars or fighting each other. And so the military have a big role. I'm not talking about Generalissimo or none of you big shots. I'm talking about regular folks. And these will be the people. Can you read that all the way through and see that had begun? Through fear, correspondence, cut down the woods. They basically concerned about the land and the sharing and opportunities. You say, what's that got to do with the military? Well, because most of these people were not like our good old Prince Rupert. They are people of the soil who come to be part of this new model army. And maybe they're getting a little disillusioned. But they were behind in their pay. And I mean, this is like, what about us? Because we often think in a republic, these folks at the bottom, they're going to get special attention. Well, no, not necessarily, but they make it work because without them, we're just directing the fight. They're doing the actual fighting, but they are being told now, these lords of manners, MANORS, we want share. Now, we've heard all this before, but I think we hear it even more now. The idea that more ought to be done for us. And you say, sounds revolutionary. Well, there's some of that, yes.
There we go.
Yes. And from the army and related forces, there will be this printed agreement of the people. And who are the people? Well, that's probably the board who set it up. Because you can imagine a regular group of soldiers, you know, with the thing. Should we put that in there? Where will that paragraph go? I don't believe that for a minute. I don't mean to be cynical, but I'm just saying, I think they had a group of people who were probably great editors.
Lawyers.
Yeah, well, I don't know. But yeah, they probably had individuals who were, because this is not something Cromwell would necessarily have approved of.
Oh,
So we want to understand these people are a different cut But the agreement of people proposed as a rule for future governments and the establishment of a firm and lasting peace, drawn up by several well-affected persons, tendered to the consideration of the General Council, and now offered. So basically, printed in London. You notice the date, 1648. So the idea is we've got some proposals, and you better pay attention to it because we're.
Is this also how they were putting out to the public that they weren't allowed to do what they had been doing prior? Like how he sent out his expectations to people?
Well, yeah, but I mean, I wonder how many people were able to read it. You got to always remember the literacy factor. Maybe somebody read it. But for those who are literate, it would be a very significant way. I mean, they don't have television, they don't have radio, they don't have all the modern means. You're going to do all this in terms of spreading it. And you have spokespeople, don't you think, who go around, spread the word, charismatic people like you are, who could then, and everybody would hang on your every word, I'm sure. And so that's the idea. But it is interesting that all of this has been preserved. And it indicates that power of the printing press. There you see the individual who might have been the future. Cromwell's son-in-law, Ireton. And boy, he is fired up like his daddy-in-law. That is to say, I'm not sure either Cromwell nor Ireton exactly cared for some ideas that they consider to be radical. For example, many of these groups favored what today we would call universal manhood suffrage. And when I say manhood, I mean that literally. People like Cromwell and Ireton said, if you have land, then you're up for voting. But you servants or you workers, you leave it to us. In other words, there is going to be a limited suffrage. And whereas these masses favor the idea of all men have the vote. Like these military folks, they're sitting around saying, well, why can't we vote? We were in the army. Yeah, but you're not vested in the system. So these ideas are more or less, oddly, you might say, from the lower ranks of the military, and they're spreading to other people. Religious toleration. Well, I mean, Cromwell, Ireton, people like say, yeah, maybe some, but you bring out some rosary beads, you just get out of it. You're not going to have any of that. Religious toleration goes only so far in the eyes, but in addition to supporting the voting on all people, the toleration will be a separation between the Cromwellian group and the mass of people that we're going to talk about momentarily. But there's always that question of how far will you go? Because religious toleration says, well, then what about the Unitarians or what about the Quakers? No, we can't have any of that. But otherwise, You know, it's like there always limits. And what if you just say, welcome to California, anything goes, you know, we're not there yet. This is 17th century English. But the idea of religious toleration up to a point is very clear. As far as this army. But I'm not sure that Cromwell and people of that sort were willing to go that far. Goodness, they even had a problem with the Presbyterians. So definitely not sure about that. Now, these Putney debates. On a trip to London, you might want to stop by Putney and they give you a tour. But that was a place, that's a part of London where this debate was held. And all civilized and all very respectful. And I can only imagine the individuals who spoke. But this is pretty democratic for the 17th century. That means you have individuals speaking for Cromwell's point of view. And what these Putney debates are going to come up with is we have a problem of universal manhood suffrage. Here, I've quoted a part of it. And notice it's here in Oxford. And I think it's interesting. You see the greatest he, and what that would be 17th century English, he meaning, you say man. And that word simply means there's an elite. And this guy who represents, obviously, those levelers. And they're, again, I think it's, what would they say, the British drums, cheeky, that they're saying, in effect, I'm just as important as you are. And of course, can you imagine, you think we're all fighting together and then we can all hold each other? No, I'm not touching you because we're part of the elite. It's an interesting issue, isn't it, when you think about that? But these Putney debates say to put, and it's not an error, type of, that's the way they spelled it, P-U-T-T, himself under this government, the poorest man in England is not bound. How serious is this? This is not going to be primitive Marxism. I don't think we're that far along, but more or less, and certainly nobody's dreaming about any of the sisters coming aboard and saying, we want equal rights and 17th century Jeanette Rankin. There's none of that, okay? This is strictly on the male side. But as far as Cromwell is concerned, I'm trying to run England, keep Scots and Irish and those darn Dutch under control. Because we're England, go Big E, and don't mess with us. But it's an interesting debate. And we all know who won at that point in the 17th century. But it's interesting that this went on. Now, I bring this up because I know there are those of you who love literature, and maybe you would like to do a special presentation on Milton's greatest hits. I admire you so much because your expertise, it's just like a great dove. You fly around everywhere spreading knowledge. But what I always find amazing is to think, and I know, do you love Paradise Lost the most of his work? Or was there something that you would prefer to read? I mean, what do you care about the most? I mean, whatever, I'll be impressed. I know that. But basically, it can be tough going. Let me say that. I just want to warn you that you can start this weekend. You can let me know. And none of those yellow and black things.
Yellow, black.
Yeah. I don't want you to be harmed by that. I want your journey to be pure without any of those. Cliff, never the color.
Cliff
Yeah.
notes.
No, you're above that. You're too good for that. But yeah, and Milton, he's writing all these. Can you imagine Paradise Lost and Paradise Regained? And you're thinking, wow, some of my greatest fun times. Yeah, right. And you're thinking, how is he earning a living? Working for Cromwell's government. Yeah. Bureaucrat. London. I mean, I don't know why, but I just find it absolutely fascinating. And you say, I hope this won't hurt the way you feel about Milton, that you will love him just as much. Don't go down, please, because you got to understand that he grew up that way, the whole puritanical tradition. And so that's expressed, of course, as you know from your literary studies. So all of that then is to say that Milton goes on, and you know the life of Milton, because he will go on, I imagine, certainly if I'd been Milton, after Cromwell it finishes, shall we say. If I were Milton, I would go into retirement because those are good times for Milton. Not so good later to be in that role. But anyway, he's an interesting figure. And again, I'll be waiting for that summary of either you do Lost or Regained. I'll accept either. General Monk. What had happened was that in 1658, Cromwell would in fact pass on. Certainly before his time, but that stress will get you. Yep. And I guess killing those Irish and beating up on Dutch and making folks behave, you're not getting that day off. You went to church,
No
buddy.
Saints Day for you, buddy.
You read the Bible. And no apocrypha. You read Old and New Testaments. And don't stop until I say yes. Mainly, all of this will wear you out, even though the Lord wants you to do it. Anyway, he died, and the question is, what will happen now? And the figure comes up of Richard, otherwise known as Poor Dick. From 1659 to 1660, or thereabouts, he would try to maintain his father's Lord Protectorship. Oh, how many juniors in history have failed to carry on? Yeah. And you say, I'm just surprised he lived, because he had a nice long life, and he would live in exile for years and then get to come back to finish out his life. But he just wasn't up. I don't know. It wasn't a DNA issue. I mean, he was definitely Cromwell's son. Richard was just, I know you would have had to be pretty powerful to have followed him. And with all the issues, it's not like a monarch. You can't say Oliver turned to poor Dick and said, you know, Dick, I'm leaving all this to you. You know, sort of like Elizabeth to Charles, all of that. Well, that's not the way. That's what you have in a republic. I mean, you can't, it's just not like being king. So basically, when it was apparent that Richard would not be able to maintain this, I think he was allowed a quiet retirement, you know, golden parachute. So General Monk comes from, with a military forward, small, comes down from Scotland. He says, well, let me see what I can do. He was primarily a negotiator rather than, as I would say, a great warrior. But it was his decision, along with leaders of parliament, and they were brought back. Last night, I wonder how many survived all those years. But now they came back. You know, Cromwell had basically sent them all home. He got mad at them. I'm just sick of y'all. And it's not like they can, you know, like bad children. You can't do that. I mean, they left. So this parliament, it basically went on from 1640 to 1660, imagine. Now, why 1640? Well, that's when Charles ran out of money and called it. But it didn't end until 1660 when he brought it back and said, boy, that's a long time. 20 years. I mean, they weren't there all that time. But they came back because General Monk had something to tell them. Y'all, wait, you say y'all, but you folks, I've got some big news. I'm talking to somebody special. And you know what he told me to tell you? He loves you very much. And they're going like, oh, shucks, really? And you know who it is. That is going to be the future Charles II. He has been in exile with the other Stuarts since, golly, remember January 30th, 1649? Of course you do. They've been over there. Do you know what it's like being in exile? I just would hate that. You know, it's like you ask for contributions. But I mean, think about the Philippines and the Marcos, folks. I mean, I hope you have enough in your bank account, because that could be embarrassing. Because you got to ask Cousin Lou, can I float a loan? And you say, well, how are those two families connected? I thought you were. You remember Charles I. Charles first, Henrietta Maria. You knew that. And you're just too modest. I respect. Henrietta Maria was actually the sister of Louis XIII. So in fact, she was the aunt of Louis XIV. Remember, it's all up here. So the idea is that all of these stewards have been over there, and they said, gosh, look in the post office box and see if there's a check. Remember when people used to wait for Social Security checks to come in the mail? All of that, can you imagine stewards waiting, said like, we love you very much, sincerely, Bourbons, because that's embarrassing, but that's what the Marcos probably have to do, to pay her shoe bill. But basically, all of this is to say that General Monk apparently was in negotiations with Charles because Charles lived, again, tulips, Breda, right there in the Netherlands. I'd love for you to stop by there during the festival and tell them, explain to them why they're important. Yeah, and why they're important for English history. I know they'll care. I'm delusional, I'll admit it. But the Declaration of Breda, as we will see, 1660, and you got all your dates there. I'm going to go here and understand if you had been in Charles' role, you don't want to just be a pretend king. Because you know the servants go around and call you your majesty and all that. But it's not the same. What are you going to do every day? You know, have long walks. When I become king, you know, how much better is it? Power. So General Monk says basically, Your Majesty, if we could have a little agreement. Yes, some naughty things happened while your family left, including your dad's bed. That was a no-no, but they did it. Could we have a buy on that? Basically, no harm. No, well, not that far, but let's just say we're all real sorry. You love us, we love you. And how about general religious toleration? Even rosary people. Yeah. I know, and you're going like, wow, super liberal. Maybe some Quakers in the middle.
Any Jews?
Yeah, whatever. But basically, I mean, you want to be king. You don't, and I don't think they're going to get picky about religious toleration. Not when moving to England. Yeah. I mean, you know, Britain's beautiful, but I'd rather have London. I mean, just tell you, don't say that though to the people you look, because I don't want to offend them. But understanding that this Declaration of Breda basically was the future king's way of saying, God, I love you people. Now, I've missed you so much. This decade has been hard. Hard on you, hard on me. I don't know how much can you badmouth Cromwell, you know, and that sort of. But this document, I mean, it's got some splendor in it. I mean, it's sweet. It is very sweet. You know, toleration, let bygones be bygones. Let's all sing kumbaya. You know, that sort of thing. So he does that. And then you have this. I love this lithograph. And the idea is the young child. I know. And you're saying, gosh, I'm so happy. I've got Kleenex puffs, whatever you need. Because this is the idea. That trip from right up to England. And you're singing like, we're in the money. And it's like, because that's good. No more checks from those French. We're going to have plenty of sources because we're back. Look at him bowing. See him bowing. And that's good if you want to be king. Of course, everything is about hugging. And I miss y'all. I love you so much. I'm your king and you're commoners. And I just want us to be happy. And that's the scene when we have the beginning of the reign of Charles II. And presumably, he would have learned something from his late beloved father.
The current king is Charles II. Is he?
No, he's Charles the Third.
He's Charles the Third? Oh.
Because y'all want to know something funny? When our blessed Queen passed on, which was difficult for me.
Devastating.
Yeah, yeah. So we agree. When he became Charles the Third, I said, really? I wonder what the people think about Charles First and Charles Second. I said, they're probably dealing with it better than I do. I had a hard time. I went home and I thought, really, couldn't you get another name, David the First or something? But yeah, he's Charles.
Okay, I thought he was the second.
But there hadn't been one since the 17th
Long
century.
time, long time.
I know, and you think, but some of us, we just can't let it go.
Therapy.
Therapy will help
Didn't
me.
choose John, look at him where it's at.
So this is called a restoration. And I know for those of you, even those without Cliff Notes, when I say the restoration, I can just see the excitement. As you begin thinking about poetry and other literature of the 17th century, and I'm very impressed with the scope of your knowledge. It goes from history to literature, all the rest of it, because the restoration will become a very, very famous period. And you say, what about all the Cromwell memorabilia? Would you think maybe eBay of that day would come along and cause, I heart Cromwell. No, it's like we want to forget. Let it go. Because now, good times. And certainly it would be more or less for the king, that is to say, Charles II. He was back. He was still a bachelor. He may have been going to some masses. You don't need to talk about that because I don't think he did. Because, but remember, his mother was out now. Yeah. So it wasn't like she was going around and saying, well, I'm really an Anglican. No, indeed. She knew her saints' days. She'd been confirmed, even as Queen of England. The stories I could tell you about Henrietta Maria. Luckily, I won't tell. But can you imagine how happy she is, my boy? He's now the king. And yeah, the rest of the family coming. But all of that is to say that from the perspective of those people, that was very good. Now, if you'd been a participant in the Putney debates, yeah, and all of that, maybe you wouldn't have been as excited. In fact, you know what I would have done? Gone into retirement. And I wouldn't get out that much because I'm not sure when you change over, that's a pretty big change. If you said, well, I'm personal friends with the Monk family. I love General Monk, his leadership, helped so much with the transition. Because those royalists, they're going to remember what happened January 30th, 1649. The way you remember, as hurtful as it is. But that is the way it's going to come out. And the Declaration of Breda, that sounded so nice. Because we want everybody to be loving, caring. But by and large, how much is that going to stay in effect? Well, we'll see about that. But any idea of a republic will now be an idea, I hate to say it, dreamers, but remember there was a republic in France as of 1790-91, but the British never tried it again yet. And that the one experience they had I would have to say was not a good one. So that is an important matter that we need to consider here. As far as that Declaration of Breda, oh, I forgot to mention, some of these people have to be dug up and thrown. I know. Because you think about chop and all the rest. But all these folks were now dug up. Ireton, Cromwell, all of them. I mean, it's like, can't we move on? Well, I know, but I guess it's just,
Once we move in.
yeah.
Yeah.
Once we move in, because they're in sacred land. He said, well, they go to hell anyway. But we don't even want them in the same land. See? That makes us feel so much better. So all of it, isn't that amazing though? That is supposed to be a scene of the leaders being brought up. And boy, he didn't wait long, see, 1661. So it's not like, and I'm sure all the royalists or people who had been excited about Charles coming back, yay, this is great. But, crowds can be fickle. At times they think it's all wonderful.
Yeah.
But, that kind of doesn't last. But that is the initial period of digging up Cromwell, Ireton, and all of those people to destroy any remnant. Because you wouldn't mention that. I mean, if I were teaching history of the 17th century, I would say, now, class, do we want to talk about the interregnum? No. What can you tell me about the life of Cromwell? No. It's like, Soviet Union, non-history, never happened. Yeah, it's just not something that needs to be discussed. So we just go past that, which I think is very interesting in that period. And here he is in, oh yeah, I guess by this point, he might have been in his 30s, but boy, he had already decided he was not going back to France. I got my throne and I'm staying. Cheerful, lazy, and debauched. You say, well, I want to be cheerful. I know that's good. But not lazy. And certainly not debauched.
No, it could be fun.
Yeah.
But that would interfere in your work schedule. See, because you're king and you have a lot of responsibility. Womanizing, strong drink, that's not what the Lord meant for rulers to do. But cheerful, very happy, really want to have a good life. Because the policy will be cooperation with Parliament. Because that's the way, I think maybe he learned this while he was over in France. And they talked to the teachers and said, your daddy was a wonderful man. But you know why? Chop chop. Because he didn't know how to work with Parliament. So let's be nice to Parliament. We, French. Yeah, Judy.
I think he needs his dog in the photo. Because,
We love dogs.
he draws
Thank
Charles
you.
first and second. They originated the Cavalier King.
They certainly did.
In the 16th
And we're lucky for that, Judy.
And maybe we should have a show and tell next week.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. That would help the class and all of us. Martin?
I just want to mention, the last two times this topic's come up, I've tried to remember the name of the film, and I looked it up this time. I think it's from 1989. The name of the film is Restoration.
About this?
It's kind of a little
Charles II?
comedy. Yeah, it starred Robert Downey Jr. as
Oh, goodness.
just an everyman kind of guy.
Well, he was
who's going around
debauched.
looking for work. And one of the jobs he gets is taking care of the spaniels.
Oh.
And it is really, it's a funny little movie, but it's set, it's a historic, costumes and everything. And the scenes in the castle when he's taking care of the spaniels. Have you seen the scene? I remember parts of it. Yes.
Oh, you do?
I
Look,
only
So it's a
watched
dog movie? I mean, is it,
It's not necessarily a dog movie, but there are other things that happen in the movie. It's set during that
Sounds like
period.
best in show.
oh, but there's no, we don't have to watch Cromwell being, the remains of
I
Cromwell
can't
being done.
remember how much is mentioned in it, but it's set, I mean, it's historic and everybody's in costume,
Yeah. I bet they have an adult beverages.
It says
And-
it's a 17th century England who gains favor with King Charles, but
What's that?
falls from grace after being ordered to marry his mistress.
Oh,
And it's from 95.
it sounds debauchery to me.
Watcher,
If they'd been in the library, that wouldn't have happened. But yes, at that, see the idea, look at the outfit. I just found this. I mean, even from his father, you can tell a distinct difference between hair and clothing and the rest of it. But that's the way he must have gotten up and looked every day. And again, the number one matter, getting a wife.
Thought it was money.
Well, I don't mean to put it on that level. I mean, yes,
Wait, isn't that what comes with the wife? Is the dowry?
love, romance.
Uh-huh.
Come on. Don't you watch Hallmark? Come on. We need to remember it's all about love.
Uh-oh.
Look at him. He, look at that little, look at that mustache.
Look like your animals.
But Charles II came across as pleasant, agreeable. And he definitely cooperated because he liked to have plenty of money. It's good to have money. I don't mean to speak of the filth of lucre, but I mean, we just want our bills covered. Yeah.
A
And
little extra.
exactly. And I mean, he didn't want anything nasty like happened to his father. Chop, chop. So basically, this is a matter of cooperation. You smile when Parliament meets, and oh, thank you. That's very nice. Sometimes you could get that in the Crown. The Queen got the Churchill. That kind of thing. Remember? But how long will that last? Well, if we can get the money in there, she is, like you suggested, Catherine of Braganza.
She got cash.
Who would like a Portuguese? Because the Portuguese are not poor.
Uh-uh.
They are what you call loaded. Catherine Braganza was available and came with a really nice dowry. Sadly enough, she was not able to bear a legitimate child. But she was now the queen. And it might seem like an odd choice if he didn't marry anyone who was French. Because, cousins, that's okay. Or an Austrian or whatever. Habsburg, Bourbon. But no, he went to Catherine Braganza. And the family was fairly new, but that's how she became the ruler. So that must have been very odd. You just brought in from Lisbon, and before you can turn around, you're the Queen of England, and you're still in English 101, Portuguese is very similar to Spanish, is it not? So I assume she was working hard on her lessons. As far as the relationship of Charles and Catherine, it was okay. But what did they call those things? Open marriage, you know what they call it? Yeah, yeah. Okay. It wasn't open for her, but it was open for him. He, do you call it free love, or he had a number of special friends. So, and there she is, was the last one. For this individual, very attractive. Her name was Nell Wayne. And Nell was an actress. And the king loved theater. Not like the wonderful theater you knew, Martin. She was an actress, but she was an actress when she was with the king. Yes. And he was not religiously intolerant. He had mistresses of the papal faith. So it's like sharing. And exactly. You want to go to mass, or you want to go to preaching, I'm with you. Charles was very busy in the fornication department. That's
Right.
major activity. Isn't that amazing?
That's why it was so
Now-
cheerful.
Huh?
That's why it was so cheerful.
Is that it?
Yeah, sure.
Well, and he acted trying to impregnate Catherine at the same time.
And
Remember
he
that?
wasn't lazy.
That's why the queen, I mean, but she knew all this was going on. But after all, remember, as I said about the Tudors, you can have all the children you want, but if they're not legitimate, yeah, nice try, but it's not going to work. So he had quite the dissolute life. I'm sure Oliver Cromwell would not have approved, but then his remains have been thrown out on the street, so we don't worry about what he thinks. Meanwhile, Catherine, ratemyqueen.com, this is not good for her because she is seriously RC. And what does that mean? That means, look around us, the Catholics are coming, the Catholics are coming. And maybe those Jesuits.
Ooh.
Yes. And are we a little paranoid? Indeed we are. And why are we? Well, look, the Queen and the King, how do we know he's not going to mass? Yeah. Or visiting with their bishops, you know, that kind of thing. So the Pope, this so-called Popish plot, Titus Oakes, this is the weirdest thing about, he is a renegade Anglican clergyman who basically spreads this out. This is something like an ex-communist going before the House Committee on Un-American Activities and saying, yeah, I can name names and you know, and all of that back in the 50s. Yeah, because this guy, he's going out and saying, yeah, I believe the king is under the influence of that Catholic woman, that Portuguese woman. And I think I saw him one time with some rosaries. You know, that kind of thing. And they're all going like, could you imagine? And everybody is just getting really excited. You know, so all of this is Titus Oakes. That's how he's going to end up. And I guess everybody can throw fruit at him. Or so. You're a loser. But yeah, that sort of thing. It just is a symbol of the paranoia of the period that everybody is worried about everybody else. But there's no reason to think the Queen and those remaining Catholics are much of a threat, and certainly not considering the King's background, because he is still, remember, defender of the faith. And he goes to morning prayer, and morning he's got the Book of Common Prayer right there. And if you brought out some rosary, you would say, well, that's your business. But I am C of E all the way. So you keep your popery to yourself.
That's right.
And that's what during this period while he was debauched and lazy and happy. Yeah, because, and probably meeting some woman, for some long weekend, if you know what I mean. But that is the way it's a very interesting business in this period to realize that everybody just doesn't come together. Although I have tried but failed to come up with any evidence that there is some sort of bring back the Republic movement. Like there's somebody saying, oh, I don't really like those Stuarts anymore. I miss Cromwell. I miss him so much. Those were good times. No, if I were part of any such movement, I would be real quiet about it and say, I'm just glad the king is there and I'm happy he has enough money because I want him to be happy. Now, is the reign going to be completely happy? No, of course not, because it's going to be a long reign. Because despite his lifestyle, as I would even call him, use a word, debauchery. Yeah. And I don't mean that in a good way, but debauched people sometimes live a long time. So this debauched king lived a long time, but the reign itself fell into problems over religion, over the power of the king, and of course, the ongoing issue of the power of Parliament. So I think we'll start there next time. Thank you all. Thank you.